What's happening, YouTube? My name is Immortal Coil, and today we're talking about the trusted news source, Collider. We learned from Collider today that Star Wars Episode 9 will pick up a year after The Last Jedi. Whole year. John Boyega, when he's not running his mouth picking on Star Wars fans, dropped the morsel in Empire magazine that Episode 9 takes place 1 year. I'm going to put a link to Collider and to the thing so you guys can evaluate it for yourself. But this is going to get me a little bit agitated because the prequel series has not done a very good job of continuity. And this is what's funny to me. Okay, I've made this point before, but it stands to be made again. When we have the sequel trilogy defenders coming out and saying like, well, you know, it's a kids movie, and yeah, that's how they sound to me. One of the biggest problems that I had between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is the lack of time passing. Okay, now before I saw or knew what The Last Jedi would do to all of our hearts, it seems like a novel concept. Star Wars had never done anything like that because there's always been like, you know, a passage of time, a seasoning of skills, and then whatever we missed out on was in the opening crawl. Cool. Good formula. Which is in keeping with the serials that George Lucas grew up with. You know, he always talked about Buck Rogers and, you know, Rocket Man and World War II and all that kind of stuff. And that shows in his art. Now, we can't blame the man for what's going on now. I honestly think he's like counting his money and, you know, kind of going like, how much is enough? I don't know. But to go from The Force Awakens, okay, you have this rube on a desert planet. Finds the Millennium Falcon somehow, meets Han Solo and Chewie, flies to a planet that has Anakin's lightsaber, not Rey's. Then she cuts down Kylo Ren and gets a hug from Princess Leia. Sorry, Chewie. And then goes to Ahch-To and finds Luke Skywalker. Seems like a good setup, right? Yeah, ish. But then what happens? No passage of time. This is like a span of like 3 days, okay? Luke gets the thing and does that, and we see him emasculated. We see him drinking like breast milk. We see him getting whacked in the head. There's only 2 people that whacked Luke in the head in that movie. Rey and Master Yoda. And then he does his like Matrix teleporty thing that kills him somehow. And then that's it for Luke. Now this is what's weird. If this is less than a week, we have a girl in the desert eating space muffins, selling garbage to that guy from Scotty from Star Trek, the new Star Trek, to being like the fucking Jesus Christ of the new universe, right? Wrong. That's not how this works. It's not how this works, movie. So And this is again something interesting. J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson are batting this ball back and forth. Now, this is based solely off of intuition, but I believe that J.J. Abrams inside meant well for the sequel trilogy, but Rian Johnson, or whoever the fuck hired him to write, had a separate agenda. And they wanted to push these new characters, and they wanted to inject their social fucking political beliefs into our movie, and it didn't work. It didn't fucking work. Nobody liked that shit. People will say they like that shit, and especially people who want perks from Disney. But that wasn't a good movie. And the movie that came out that was kind of okay got made into an even shittier piece of shit. Just by the sheer value of having to stand next to it. Here's all this cool stuff that happened. So, episode 9, we learn from John Boyega, is taking place 1 year after episode 8. So, all of our speculation and all of our suggestions about how to fix episode 9 and retcon most of episode 8 ain't gonna happen. So, what are we gonna discover? Rey's probably been doing like bookworm things with the Jedi texts, so she's gonna be even more awesomer. We're gonna have to figure out a way to kill Princess Leia. Chewie's probably gonna live. He's like the oldest bastard alive still. The only guy who is older than him is Yoda, and I guess now Maz Kanata, the older Yoda. There's so much shit to fix in this movie that it's gonna be like watching a slow motion accident where bodies and limbs are flying everywhere, and then we wait for the ambulance to show up, and then the lawyers show up right after the ambulance. You know, it's like one of those 1-800 lawyer commercials. I think the only people who handled time correctly in Star Wars was George motherfucking Lucas and Dave Filoni. Now it's funny because in fucking Rebels they introduced the idea that you can do time skips. I'm glad they're not using that as a crutch, but it was handled mostly tastefully. I'm not quite sure how I feel about all that, but it did put an interesting stamp on the end of Vader and Ahsoka's arc. So, we're going to just have to take this as it comes and roll with it. We know that Star Wars isn't very forthcoming with factoids. And if somebody says something, it's either because they've been set up to say it, or it's because they fucked up and said it. Either way, we'll watch your career with great interest. My name is Immortal Coil. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, drop me a comment, let me know what you want to see covered on future editions of Savage Spirituality. And remember, if you live with regret, you are living in the past. If you are living with worry, you are living in a not solidified future. But if you're in the present moment, then you realize now is all there is. What are you going to do with your now?